Okay, so we'll continue with our webinar series. Today, I have the pleasure to have with us Sherrie, that is the founder and CEO of the Association for Pelvic Organ Prolapse Support. She has a wonderful website, www.pelvicorganprolapsesupport and .org. Am I right, Sherrie?
Yes, it's .org, right, .org.
And I have I'm very proud to call Sherrie my friend. I have seen Sherrie throughout many years of attending different conferences, and she has been always the main voice for our patients. So today, the webinar is going to be a little bit different. Rather than me talking about a topic, I want Sherrie to be the voice about all the complaints that she may get from the forum that she has in her website. So in that way, we can improve our patient relationship with our patients. So, okay. So today, let me ask you to start asking you, Sherrie, how you became this main voice for the patients with pelvic organ prolapse.
Well, like most women, I had never heard of pelvic organ prolapse when I was diagnosed with it. I had, going backwards a little ways, when I was 30, I was diagnosed with MS, and it was very, very aggressive, and was told wheelchair bound, short time frame. And so I obviously found answers for myself. I started digging down and looking for alternative pathways to recapture my health. And once I did, moving forward, I was extremely proactive with all aspects of my health and my extended family's health, discovering that there were answers out there if you just look far enough and deep enough, was very insightful for me to experience. So if you fast forward then, so I was 30 when I was diagnosed with MS, and fast forward to when I was 54, I had symptoms actually of prolapse going back into my late 30s, but I didn't know what those symptoms meant. So at 54, I always worked a 60-hour week. That's my normal. And at that point in time, I'd run into the bathroom. I had to go run into the bathroom. And for about 3 months, I noticed I felt a lump down in the vaginal area. But I was busy, so I would go in, go to the bathroom, wipe, go back to work. That was it. And after about 3 months of feeling that lump, I got curious, and I got a handheld mirror out and I took a look to see. And of course, there was a nice walnut-sized lump coming out of my vagina. And I was like, okay, that can't be good. I don't know what that is. Looked like a tumor, which women often think that's what it is a tumor. But I never heard of tumors coming out of the vagina before. So I thought, that didn't seem like a fit to me. So I contacted a close friend of mine who was my PCP at that point. And I sent her an email and I said, this is what's going on. And she said, come on in, we'll do a pelvic exam. And very quickly upon examination, she said, quite matter of fact, that you have pelvic organ prolapse. I'll fit you with a pessary. If you're not happy with the pessary, I will refer you to a good urogynecologist that I know, and you can discuss surgery with her. I had no clue what she was talking about, no clue whatsoever. And I spent all these years doing all of this, digging into health topics of multiple types. I'd never heard of this condition. So I did what most patients do. I went home, I hit Dr. Google. So tell me what the scoop is here. And everything I pulled up said the same thing. It's so common. And all of the, whether it was articles or research, it was mostly articles I pulled up at that point in time. They all said at that point, it was 3.3 million women in the US is what they were saying was the data for prevalence. And now we read in here 50% all the time. So, but even at the 3.3 million, I was just like, oh, how come I don't know about this? And then I was mad. I was smoking hot, furious. I could not believe that this was happening to me, and I'd never heard of it before. I was so upset. So some women, when they're diagnosed, are freaked out. Some are anxious, and a few of them, like me, are angry. And I was in that angry slot. So I knew within 2 weeks, I spent the next couple of weeks digging for more information. And within 2 weeks, I knew this was my destiny. I can't tell you how I knew that. I had no backdrop in medical practice. I had no backdrop in writing. I had no backdrop in nonprofit sector. I just felt it in my gut that this was where I was supposed to be. So step one for me was to write a book to get the information into the hands of women, because I knew if I didn't know about it when I'd had such an aggressive backdrop in health, looking for answers, that women in general didn't know about it. So I didn't know how I was going to write a book. I'll write a book. I don't know what I was thinking. So I started capturing information, and my primary care that had fitted me for the past 3 did a great job. She got the right size right out of the chute. It worked well. It was comfortable. I had a few surprises with it. I didn't realize that, when you bear down to have a bowel movement, that it'll pop out into the toilet bowl. So I had a few surprises along the way, but by and large, it worked well. But very shortly after I was fitted, I knew I just didn't have time to deal with one more thing to do in my life, because I worked a lot of hours. And so I contacted her and I said, you know what, I don't think the pessary is going to work for me. I just don't think it's going to be the right fit. So she referred me to the urogynecologist. So I had an appointment, and it was pushed back away. So it was about 6 to 7 weeks after I was first diagnosed that I had the appointment with the female pelvic medicine reconstructive surgeon. And during that time, I just nose to the grindstone. I kept pulling up more information and more information about prolapse, the different types. I didn't know that there's actually different types of prolapse. There's 5 types. There's 4 grades of severity. The symptoms are all over the page. The treatments there's a multitude of treatments, non-surgical and surgical. There was so much to learn. So I kept digging into that stuff and somewhat organizing my notes as I went. And then by the time I got to see my urogynecologist, I had a sheet full of questions ready to rock. And she's a fabulous urogyne. I really, really like her. And she's very down to earth. And finding a really compassionate clinician is a big, big deal. It's a big, big deal. That's one of the things I love about you, Hugo. You're so compassionate, and that's priceless. You can't teach that.
So something, Sherrie, it got me by surprise that you were angry. Why you were angry?
Because I'd never heard of it. And it's so common. I couldn't believe that in all of the women's wellness stuff that you read about and you hear about, I went in for my breast exams. I went in for my pelvic exams. I did all the right stuff. And, I've been a fitness geek since the MS diagnosis to maintain that muscle strength and integrity, just to offset that. I watch my diet. I like a good brownie. Who doesn't, a glass of wine once in a while, but I kind of watch what I eat, and how I maintain a balanced weight. And because I had done all the right stuff and I'd never heard of this, and it's so common, is why I was so frustrated.
And you were angry with yourself because you didn't know, or you were angry with the system
The system. It made no sense to me. If this condition is that common, and of course, at that point, I had read that childbirth is the leading cause and menopause is right behind it, and there's a multitude of other causes. I thought, well, gee, if childbirth is the leading cause of prolapse, and I'm going in for my routine pelvic exams, how is it possible I've never heard of this?
That's a good point.
Are they checking and just not telling me? Or, what's the deal with that? So that's why I was angry. It wasn't that I hadn't discovered it on my own. It was the system. It's a failing in the system. And this is not the fault of gynecologic side or the PCP side. This is because the curriculum for POP at the diagnostic level falls short. There's a big system change that has to occur there, but that's a whole separate webinar. So, okay, so
and what it was the first thing that came to your mind when you saw the bulge in the vagina, cancer?
I see, and the word cancer didn't pop in my head. Tumor, I thought tumor, and I don't jump right to cancer when I think tumor. I just thought, looks like a tumor. It's a little round thing, it's kind of squishy, kind of look like what I assumed a tumor would look like. So I don't ever feel, I never have, and I never will feel compelled to jump to the cancer page right away. Why make yourself crazy? It doesn't serve any purpose. So it was decent size, and it was just where it wasn't supposed to be. So by the time I saw my urogynecologist, I had all my questions all ready to rock, and I went in for that pelvic exam with her, or POP exam, I should say. And I had 3 of the 5 types of prolapse, and I was grade 3 of severity. And she said, well, Cher, this is in January. She said, we don't need to rush into this. You don't have to have, no one has to have surgery. So she says, why don't you, go home and, do your work. And I told her I was going to write a book, and she's like, oh yeah, okay, very nice. Sure. And then,
you didn't know you well.
Yeah, she does now. But at that point, she's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Everybody writes a book, So she said, we don't have to do surgery right away. And it's your choice, obviously, whether or not you want to have surgery. So she says, go home, think about it, learn more, educate yourself better. And why don't you come back and see me towards the summer, maybe even take the summer off, play in your flower beds, and then come back maybe in the fall, and then we'll talk about surgery. And I was like, wait, 2Ds, I want it yesterday, fix me. So I didn't want to have to deal with the pessary.
For how long you tried the pessary, Cher?
Well, I knew within a couple of weeks that, I had it until I had surgery, which was the first or second week in February. This is back in 2008, I had the surgery. And so it was a good 7 to 8 weeks I used the pessary.
You didn't like it at all?
Well, it was fine. It worked great. It didn't cause me any discomfort. I was able to get it in and out easily, no problem with that. It's just that I worked a 60-hour week. And I kind of put it in the same category as contact lens. Contact lenses were awesome. I had one for close-up, one for distance. Pop those things in and I'm good to go for the whole day. Your brain retrains itself and you're good to go. You can see in the car, you can see when you're reading. It was wonderful. But it was one more thing to do. And when you work a 60-hour week and you've got the phones ringing and you've got customers knocking on your door and you've got to navigate the employee stuff, it gets to be a bit much. And I had 2 dogs in the morning. I had to let out to pee and let them back in and feed them and etc. Exercise, eat, whatever. Mm-hmm. So it was just too much extra to deal with. So I just wanted to be fixed and be done with it. And because my learning curve with the MS was a long learning curve, it was, probably a good 2 years before I really understood my body and knew what the flags were and what the signs were and what I could do to address those signs to keep myself balanced. I anticipated it would be the same thing with the prolapse if I didn't jump into surgery, just have it fixed right away. So everyone's got their own reasons why they want or don't want surgery. And that's one of those really important things to respect with the individuality of patient needs. We don't ever suggest women have surgery or don't have surgery. We say, here's your options. Let's talk about them in great depth. And let's get someone else's opinion in here too. And so part of the value of what we do, what APOPS does in our closed patient support forum, is it's women talking to women. It's not APOPS making these suggestions. It's a woman will post a question and then other women who've been down that pathway say, well, here's what I did and here's what I thought and here's what happened to me. And so they share each other's experiences and it helps women educate each other. So I went ahead and I had the surgery. And it was a rough heal curve. It was a 12-week heal curve for me. And my urogyne, she says, I know your type. I'm telling you right now, straight up, no exercising for 12 weeks. Behave yourself. I'm like, okay, I will. So I spent the first week pretty much on the couch. I was a good girl. And then I gradually, worked my way back into my regimen. And it killed me. I'm an exercise geek. it killed me not to exercise for 12 weeks. It's like I could literally feel the muscles getting wussy and wussy, like, oh, that's unacceptable. I didn't like that. But I was a good girl. I behaved myself. So I used the time. I had all of my notes gathered for the first edition of my book prior to my surgery. And I used that heel curve time to write the book. It worked out perfectly. So then by the time my 12 weeks was up, the book was pretty well roughed in. And it took me through July to have it like ready to rock. And I spent July through, then if memory serves, it was October of 2008 when I finally found a publisher. I just send the pitches off to the publishing companies to see who'll actually take on your book. And back then, self-publishing wasn't as huge of a deal as it is now. So I had to, send out all the pitches. And finally one of them locked onto it. And I was so excited. It's like, oh, yay, I'm going to change women's health. This book is going to change everything. And again, naive, incredibly naive. So I had to learn about marketing, and I had to learn about building websites, and I had to learn about how to build social media and get the information out to women so that they could actually find us. And I was about maybe 15 months into marketing the first edition of my book when the light bulb came on. If I wanted to really reach women effectively and help them effectively, I should fund a nonprofit. I should really found a nonprofit. So I went down that rabbit hole. And there was a great organization at that point in time in Milwaukee here called the Nonprofit Center of Milwaukee. And they held classes in all different aspects of nonprofit flow. So I started attending classes there. And the process to become a 501c3, which is a federally recognized nonprofit, was pretty extensive at that time. I'm not sure where it's at now, but at that time it was pretty extensive. And my application was 88 pages long.
Oh, wow.
But Marquette University here in Milwaukee had it still has a great program called MLink, which you apply for their program. And if you're accepted, they will help you through that process. And so I applied and they accepted me. So they did help me through that process to get that 501c3, which was priceless, absolutely priceless. So once I had the nonprofit set up, then it was a matter of getting that information out there to women, trying to find more ways to enable them to find us so that we could actually help them.
So going back to that, because, I think that the process that you are telling me is priceless, because I'm seeing the perspectives of a patient outside. When we see the patient, we interview the patient. Is a very organized interview, but it's made by us to assess symptoms that we are thinking are the most relevant symptoms. And sometimes may not be the reason the patient is in the office. So you say, I got angry with the system because I didn't know anything about this. Then you say, I went and searched a lot of information. So when you did that, it was a very easy process, because pelvic organ prolapse can be very confusing. It's not as easy as to tell somebody, hey, you have high blood pressure, you have diabetes. This is different type of prolapse, different staging, different classification. So how you navigate the system, and do you think back in 2008 to what we have now, have we improved in that search navigation of the POP?
It's definitely improved, but it has a long way to go. The big shortfall is on the diagnostic side. We hear from women all day, every day, that they have these symptoms, and patients are savvy now. I mean, they go on Google and they Google their symptoms, and then they have that whole cheat sheet when they go see their doctors. And all too often, because the diagnostic side is so poorly educated, then we don't want them. What they do is distinctly different than what you subspecialists do, and you have to stay in your own lane. But women go to their primary care or their gynecologists all the time and are told that's what comes from having babies. Do your Kegels, come back and see me in a year. It's not that bad. And they're told that's what comes from aging. Go home and do your Kegels, come back and see me in a year. It's not that bad. They maybe are complaining about the chronic constipation that comes with the rectal seal. And so they may have to have an upper or lower GI. They may have a colonoscopy, tests that are not at all related to prolapse, or very, not very much. And it's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. It's uncomfortable. So the testing that's given them is sometimes inappropriate. There's a lot of layers that have to be addressed. And it's because there is so much self-esteem that wraps around this condition, because the symptoms are very embarrassing and women have a hard time even sharing those symptoms with their physicians. But when they share those symptoms and then they get, it's not that big of a deal, reaction, they think it's all in their head. I'm making this all up. It's not that bad. And then they go home, and then the next day, if symptoms are really bad again, they're devastated. So it's physical, it's emotional, it's social, it's sexual, it's fitness, it's employment, quality of life impact. It dissects through all of these layers of women's lives. And because women that experience prolapse, we have women in our space that are in their mid-teens through end of life. The demographic is so incredibly wide. And of course, the type of prolapse that they have and their lifestyle and their behaviors and their coexisting conditions all create different waves that impact their bodies. So there's no two women that are exactly alike, what they're experiencing. So it's very, very hard. I mean, I can't just, say, oh, it's the system, it's the system. It's more complicated than that. But in general, I've seen over time, while the diagnostic side is changing very little, or has changed very little in all the time I've been doing this, the subspecialist side has been changing considerably.
For the good way or for the bad way?
Good way, good way.
Mm-hmm.
They're becoming a little bit more, I mean, in the beginning, I felt that the female pelvic medicine reconstructive surgeons were not doing a very good job of talking out loud about this condition. And they're not where they should be yet. They're getting better though. And maybe this is just because I do what I do. I mean, I talk about prolapse out loud and the symptoms and the treatments, all of it, to everybody I know all the time. Don't bat an eyelash. And I'm sure some people are just like, oh, here comes Sherrie again, that prolapse, we're having dinner, please, Sean, quit talking about that stuff. And it's like talking about, I'm going to make a BLT for supper. For me, it's just like all day, every day, this is my normal. So the subspecialist side is getting better with comfortably talking out loud about this. You're seeing more of these subspecialists doing webinars and providing information with their patients, but and you see more of them doing video and sharing them on YouTube or with their local papers, the articles in their local papers, that kind of thing. But until the surgeons and physicians in general are really, really comfortable talking about this any place, anytime, they're not where they need to be yet. This is women's health, period. No less than, no more than. This is simply women's health. And the stigma that wraps itself around not just pelvic organ prolapse, but all types of vaginal health conditions has got to be eradicated. It's got to be stopped. It has to be overcome. And I compare all the time the evolution that we're seeing with how it was for breast health back in the 60s and early 70s. You couldn't say the word breast out loud back then. You couldn't put the word breast in print newspaper or magazines back then. Now we don't even bat an eyelash at the word breast or seeing any kind of articles about breast health. It's the norm. And that's where we need to get with prolapse and with vaginal health.
That's a good comparison there. I like that. I like that. I think you make a good point there in comparing a breast cancer to the awareness that we have nowadays for breast cancer and how open we can talk about breast cancer in any dinner, in any party, but we are not there with POP, with pelvic organ prolapse. We are not.
And that's where we need to be. That is where we need to be. And yeah, I swear, if it's not there by the time I'm dead, I will be kicking the lid off that coffin. I swear I will, because we have to get there.
We need 20 more like you, and I think we will accomplish that.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Let me ask you something. So tell me, what do the patients think about? I don't get a lot of complaints, and I think maybe I have to blame myself because maybe I'm not looking into more detail about. But tell me, what do you hear from your website and other patients about sexual related problems and pelvic organ prolapse? Are we doing a good job as a physician addressing that? We are not addressing that. Patients are not communicating. What do you think about that?
Well, here's the thing with that. It is very hard for women to bring that up to their practitioners. And that's another one of those topics I'm like, it's no big deal. It's part of life. In our closed patient support forum, women talk about everything. And I mean everything. Every nitty gritty little thing, it comes up in our space. But, and that needs to be on the same page that we're talking about the difference in what happened with breast health, because it's all aspects of pelvic organ prolapse. And so we have got to have that open communication. And I really wish that it would be standard procedure for all clinicians to, right out of the chute, ask that question when the patient, the consult first starts, is, do you have any concerns about your breast or your vaginal or your sexual, or, you can use intimate for a word, and hit the five, I can't think of all five of them right now, those 5 different aspects of health right out of the chute and open up that dialogue. Oftentimes it's uncomfortable for the patient to start the conversation, but if a physician starts the conversation, or a clinician, I should say, because there are a lot of PTs that are deeply embedded in this space too. If the clinician starts the conversation, opens up that conversation, are you having any problems with your sexual health? Is there any issue, anything going on with your vagina that you would like to share? Put that open-ended question on the table to start the conversation. And it may be a little bit awkward at first for the patient, who may just kind of hem and haw at the very beginning. But if they're hemming and hawing, there's something that they need to tell you. And then kind of gently pull it out of them with maybe a couple additional questions. I don't know that there is a specific, other than asking those 5, and I'll have to share with you. I've got a slide actually that I had built that I shared on social media that has got those 5 target areas to ask.
You have it in your website?
I don't think it's on the website. I should put it on the website. I don't think it's on the website, and I'll send it to you. There's a statement, and then there's like the 5 different topics or areas to ask about. And it's a great opening question to ask all patients that are coming through, male or female. Well, you can't use it for male or female because it's got the breast health in there. Although males have breast cancer too, so maybe it would be a good one. But,
you make a good point. As a urologist, the ED is a very open question, and I think going back to you comparing breast cancer awareness to the pelvic organ prolapse, I think even erectile dysfunction has more awareness than pelvic organ prolapse. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And the whole thing with Pfizer and the little blue pill, they really destigmatized ED, and women don't care if men take a little blue pill. They really don't care, So they did such a great job with that. And that was totally stuffed in the closet too. So the breast cancer campaign came first, then the ED campaign came, and I don't remember when that was. That was like in the 90s when that happened. I can't remember for sure.
The Viagra was 1998.
Yeah, okay. It was fabulous how they did what they did. And so, I mean, we need to get to that same space with pelvic organ prolapse. And I because we are seeing a lot more energy around it, a lot more dialogue around it. It's just not busted loose yet. And I chase media all the time. I mean, they are probably so sick of seeing my name in their emails. It's like, oh, click, delete. It's that Sherrie Palm person again. At some point, the right media exposure will occur. And when that does, it'll be like dominoes, just like it was with breast health, just like ED.
Do you think that we need that, high profile Hollywood, actress that eventually is going to take us into that pathway? You think that we need somebody like that social power to be able to open that door?
We absolutely do. And I chase them all the time too. I've got one that was Olympic speed skater that's a half an hour from me. I was chasing her big time, and she's talked about incontinence. Well, this is just a step, a side step from that, but she wouldn't engage. But I chase them all the time. And at some point, and I sent out a bunch of books to a bunch of them. Heck, I sent 3 books to Oprah. I'm always trying to rattle the cages. I pitched magazines. I pitched all the main newspapers. And I don't know what the secret sauce is to get to that right person. But once one celebrity tags in, they'll all drop like dominoes too, because you cannot tell me if it's 50% of women that celebrities are exempt. They're not. They have prolapse too. Yeah. So it just takes.
Let me ask you something, Sherrie. We do a lot of pelvic floor ultrasound for patients that have previous surgeries, and in the process that we're doing the pelvic floor ultrasound, and we continue engaging with questions and reviewing previous questions and answer. One thing that I have found a lot is in that interview and at that time, the fecal incontinence sometimes take longer for me to get to that point, but I'm looking more frequently into that, and I think it's more frequent than what we're thinking happening in our patient, and I think this is even more difficult for them sometimes to tell us. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, 100%. This is one of those areas that probably has the sexual stigma is a big deal, but the fecal incontinence is the biggest one. And I am so blessed to have been able to have had some very close, intimate conversations with women who have experienced this, and one quite young, in her early 30s. And they allowed me to ask some very personal questions. I believe I know I have at least one. I may have 2 articles in my article section on our website about this, how they reacted to it and how they navigated it. And it's something that comes up on a regular basis in our forum as well. It's the stigma of fecal incontinence is the most pronounced stigma. We are taught from the time we're itty bitty that poop is dirty and is a no-no, and you can't poop in your pants, and you need to be potty trained by the time you're 2 years old. And it's kind of interesting to me because as women, we clean up poop our whole lives. Baby poop, the puppy poop, we're all over the poop. That's what we do. But for it to happen to us, oh, no. And so most women that experience this will deny it. And here's a perfect example for you. My mother, bless her heart, who is 87 now, and I have discussed my dad died this last year, and I discussed with my parents that they both had both urinary and fecal incontinence. And because I do what I do, I had access to all kinds of free product for them. I would discuss this with them every trip up to the farm. And I would talk about it just very, very comfortably, very matter-of-factly. And to this day, now my mother's got Alzheimer's, so she wouldn't admit to it now anyway, because of the Alzheimer's, but she would never admit even to the urinary incontinence.
Mm.
I go to the doctor with them, and the doctor would ask you, any problems with incontinence? And nope, neither one of them. They were good to go. And I'm like, you guys, he's your doctor. He needs to know this stuff, but they would never admit to it. No, that does not happen to us. Even to the point where I'd gone with my parents. I met them in Madison one day. It was my dad who had an appointment with a gastro. And it's a 75-mile drive for them from the farm to Madison, to where the doctor's office was at. And there was construction going on, and my dad had to pee, and it was because of the way the roads are laid out in Madison, they couldn't get off and get to a gas station. They didn't know where they were at. They had to get to the doctor on time, and my dad peed his pants. He had tan pants on. It was plainly obvious he had urinated in his pants. It was plain as day. And as we sat in the gastro's office, he didn't take like a jacket and tie it around his waist or anything. He just sat there with this big wet stain on his pants. And the doctor never asked him and never brought it up and said anything to him. And I found it really interesting that neither my dad or the doctor mentioned what was glaringly obvious in that consult. Now, he was a gastro, he wasn't a urologist, but still you would think that topic would come up somehow in that conversation. So part of the problem is that patients are very, very embarrassed to disclose any kind of incontinence, but especially fecal incontinence. And yes, it is more common than it's talked about. And it's absolutely more common than you see in the studies. Absolutely. But I also find it interesting that physicians still find it uncomfortable to talk about and bring the topic up. So, the body is the body, this is just.
So I'm going to ask you the two last questions, and maybe I'm going to put you on the spot, but I really think that you have the knowledge and the understanding to answer them.
Okay.
The first one is, if you would be at the head of the NIH, and you have all the resources to improve research in pelvic organ prolapse, what would be your main goal and your first goal to improve research in pelvic organ prolapse?
Oh my gosh, that's a wide bucket. That's a wide bucket. At the top of the leaderboard for me is creating the awareness and destigmatizing. But because we have got to change the way back to the system thing works again, the only way we're going to do this effectively is because childbirth is cause number one and menopause is cause number two, we have got to establish POP screening as a standardized part of routine pelvic exams. That's at the very base. That's huge, huge, huge number one. If we're not catching women in an early stage to enable them to first even know the condition exists and know how they need to modify their lifestyle and their behaviors, we're shooting them in the foot. They're shooting themselves in the foot. And it makes no sense to me that if childbirth is a leading cause and women are having pelvic exams once a year or once every 2 years or however often, whatever the norm is right now, they keep changing that. And they're not being screened for prolapse and it's 50% prevalent. That's like a no-brainer. That is the big key NIH needs to focus on. And then along with that, the awareness tags into that and the destigmatization tags into that, because just like what happened with breast cancer, once everything was rolling, the stigma just fell away.
I like that. I think that we sometimes as a physician, we always look this fancy, complicated, NIH-based research, and I think that what you are telling is more simple, more meaningful type of research, which can be as simple as increasing awareness of the pelvic organ prolapse in the patient community, but as well to improving that screening process in the physician community. And I think that you are even extending these to the primary care physician.
Right.
You're not only saying, hey, urologists, gynecologists, urogynecologists, you are bringing into the equation to PCP need to be more proactive in doing pelvic exam. Am I right?
Exactly, and it even includes midwives because they're birthers. So bringing them in, I mean, and the physical therapy side, they have got women's health. They've got a separate division. But yes, the more we engage, this should be basics should be incorporated into multiple fields of nursing practice. Look at the nurse practitioners, and there's multiple fields of nursing that we've got a lot of nurses in our. We've got quite a few clinicians in our forum, but a lot of nurses in our forum. And we hear from them all the time. They receive no curriculum in POP, none, zero.
Yeah.
So across the board, at the base level for anyone who engages in women's health, this should be, it doesn't have to be like full blown, but the basics should be included in the curriculum. Absolutely.
The last question, and I think the most important one, if you will have 11,000 urologists looking at this webinar, what would you say to them? What is the message that you want to convey to a urology community? I'm a urologist, and the American Urology Association membership, I think it's close to 11,000. So what is the message that you want to tell all of them?
I would like to encourage them to open their minds to this huge percentage of women that are going to be needing more subspecialists engaging in the process and more on the diagnostic side engaging in the process. So for all of the urologists out there, once awareness goes large, we're going to need a lot more doctors addressing women's needs. And here's this huge pocket of physicians that are ready to fingertips that need to come on in, help us do what needs to be done to advance women's health into the 21st century. Please think of it.
I think that's a very clear message, and I really share, I'm very proud to call you my friend. Thank you for taking your time at the end of the day. I know that you're doing thousands of things at the same time to connecting with our patients, and I could not be more happy to have been share this time with you, be honest with you.
Well, it's always a delight to engage with you, Hugo. I love you. The warmth just flows out of you. Your patients must adore you. They must. So I love your work and I love your mindset, and it's just a pleasure to do anything that engages in your process. So thank you for asking me to participate in this.
How
webinar.
can they get your book? Can they go to your website to get your book?
Yes, they can. The book is Pelvic Organ Prolapse, The Silent Epidemic. The third edition is the current edition that's out. So if you want to get that one rather than one of the first two, it's got the most comprehensive information in it. And there is, if you go to our website, on the home page, there's a picture of the cover of the book. And below that picture of the book, there's a link to get to the book page. And there's an Amazon link in there to order the book from Amazon. But you can also go to any bookstore and ask them to, if you have the title of the book, go to any bookstore and ask them to order the book in for you, and they will do that as well. So
I do have several copies of your book in my office, so as well, I can provide any of the patients that would like to get a copy. I will be more than happy to give you a copy. So awesome. Thank you, Sherrie, very much, and I hope that I can see you soon in Florida. And I'm looking forward to connect you again in one of our meetings. I'm tired of all these internet-based connection. I really need face-to-face again.
I agree. It's been a while. We're due. So thank you so much for everything you do to help women, Hugo.
Take care.
You're awesome. Take care.